Hello everyone, let's have more news about the Steelers, but first don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave a like. The Pittsburgh Steelers have made some poor financial decisions in recent years, but it's nothing compared to the fiasco the Denver Broncos are still dealing with when it comes to Russell Wilson. 2 years after sending Wilson packing, the Broncos are set to eat an obnoxious dead cap hit for the 2025 season for a quarterback who is on his third team since 2023. According to SpotRack.com, Wilson has a dead cap hit of $32 million due to his post-June 1st designated release in 2024. This is an enormous amount of unusable 2025 cap space for a Denver team hoping to compete in the playoffs in 2025. In comparison, the Steelers signed Wilson in 2024 on a one-year veteran minimum contract at just $1.21 million. Though he failed miserably down the stretch of the season last year, Wilson's contract for Pittsburgh in 2024 was roughly 1/26 of the dead cap hit. The Broncos are still paying for Wilson to not be on the team 2 years after moving on from the aging quarterback. Thankfully, the Steelers' biggest dead money hit in 2025 is Larry Ogunjobi, who will cost the team just over $3.53 million in dead cap space this year. Looking at it this way, it's not so bad. As bad as it hurts to have wasted a year with Russell Wilson at the helm in 2024, it only cost the Pittsburgh Steelers a fraction of what the Denver Broncos are forced to live with. In March of 2022, the Broncos sent multiple first-round picks to the Seattle Seahawks in exchange for Wilson. As if the loss of elite draft capital wasn't good enough, Denver was forced to turn around and hand Wilson a 5-year, $245 million contract. These outrageously steep investments resulted in getting just 2 years of pedestrian quarterback play from Wilson before cutting their losses and moving on. Now let's go to another video. Don't forget to leave a like.
Be breaking down 6 players on the Steelers roster that are slated to be free agents next offseason that I think could get extended by the Pittsburgh Steelers this offseason, that is, if the price is right. Before we get into today's edition of Steelers Talk by Chat Sports, make sure you guys click that subscribe button because we give you guys the most extensive Steelers coverage you can find anywhere on YouTube, 100% free, daily Steelers videos, daily updates on Steelers OTAs and the Aaron Rodgers situation, breaking news coverage if the Steelers trade for a new receiver or if Aaron Rodgers finally comes out of his hole and signs a contract. We also go live at least twice a week on this channel. It's all 100% free. We are currently the largest individually run Steelers news program anywhere on the YouTube platform with over 85,000 Steelers fans already subscribed. So thank you guys so much for clicking that subscribe button. And with that, let's get into our extension candidates here, starting with, of course, TJ Watt. And this has been a big talking point in Steelers Nation this offseason is will the Steelers give TJ that extension and how much is it going to be? And, I do expect this to kind of go down to the wire, kind of similar to the way the Cam Hayward and Pat Freiermuth situations were handled last year where, it got figured out in training camp. I would kind of assume that the same thing is going to happen with TJ this year, where TJ is going to be asking for a certain amount of money. The Steelers are going to be kind of having their number, and they're not going to really budge either way until, we get close to the season. And then I'm guessing the Steelers will probably end up being the ones that fall off their number. But, of course, the big storyline here is Myles Garrett got $40 million per season from the Cleveland Browns this offseason, completely resetting the edge rusher market, and as a result, the Steelers may have to pay millions of dollars more for TJ Watt because they waited to pay him, and that's unfortunate, but listen, man, in the end, I do think that Pittsburgh needs to pay up, and I think they will pay up, and the reason why I think they need to pay up is because they claim that they're still trying to win Super Bowls this year and especially next year before Cam Hayward ends up retiring. They want him to retire a champion. And plain and simply, guys, without TJ Watt, the Steelers have no chance of doing that. You look at just his general impact, guys, when he is healthy, when he's on the field versus when he's not on the field, the Steelers are a completely different team. Not only on the defensive side of the ball, where the opponent points per game drops down by a touchdown, they get more than a sack more per game with Watt on the field versus without him on the field. They get almost a half turnover more per game when he's on the field versus not. The win percentage speaks for itself. The Steelers are one of the best teams in football, and he's on the field. Doesn't matter who their quarterback is. That's like with Mitch Trubisky, Mason Rudolph, Kenny Pickett. They're a winning football team when TJ Watt is their quarterback, and they're not when he's not on the field, plain and simply. But also the offensive numbers go up quite significantly as well. Then if you think that that's just based on his career and not on recent history, just last year, guys, the same win percentage before the injury last year, the ankle injury he suffered versus the Philadelphia Eagles. Didn't win a single game after that injury was suffered. And then the points per game offensively dropped significantly. The defense gave up 10 more points a game. The sack, you get one less sack per game with him out of the lineup and almost 2 less turnovers per game with him injured. Now, TJ obviously played through the injury, but he was significantly hindered. And I don't think I have to tell Steelers fans just how impactful a healthy TJ Watt is to the Steelers team as a whole. And all I'm going to say here is that after the market reset with Myles Garrett earlier this offseason, I just hope they can get this done before Micah Parsons and the Cowboys get their deal done. Because what if Micah signs a contract for $42 million and then TJ's like, I need $43 million per season? If that happens, the Steelers are going to be in a very difficult spot. $40 million per season plus is already putting the Steelers in a tough situation financially, but it's one that I think, TJ is certainly the kind of impact player that you certainly give that kind of money to. So what say you guys? Let me know down there in the comment section. Would you pay TJ Watt $40 million per season, even though, he's starting to get close to the other side of 30 years old? Give me a yes or a no down there in the comment section for today's pinned question. YouTube's going to throw you an ad break here in just a couple of seconds. And when that happens, take advantage of that time by giving me simply a yes or a no. Another player that I could see get extended this year is Jaylen Warren, the running back. Now, Warren is somebody that is a fan favorite and is one of my favorites, all right? If there was ever a Sperry psycho on this team, it would be Jaylen Warren. He's an awesome pass protector. He's great on third down as a receiving back as well. Contact balance is through the roof. And, just since 2022, all right, you look at some of the advanced metrics. He's second in explosive run rate. I mean, Najee Harris didn't give you any explosive runs whatsoever. Jaylen was providing those explosive runs for you pretty much exclusively. He's been sixth in the league since 2022 in yards after contact, sixth in the league in yards per carry. So he's super efficient, and then sixth in success rate. So Jaylen Warren is a phenomenal running back, guys. And, I think that for the right price, I would lock him up. Now, if he's asking for like top 5 running back money, maybe I don't give him that extension. But like if he loves it here in Pittsburgh and he understands he's probably going to be the number 2 running back in this system to Caleb Johnson in the years to come, and he's willing to take like a number 2 running back type of contract, then absolutely, I would say lock him up to that long-term contract. And obviously, you have to get the right price for him. He's going to be your kind of number 2 running back of the future with Caleb Johnson coming in, who I expect to be the number 1 guy of the future. But for the right price tag, I'm absolutely willing to keep Jaylen Warren for the long haul. He is a Steeler. Then we get to Deshaun Elliott here, who had a really good season last year, and the Steelers got a steal for him on a 2-year contract. They're not really paying him all that much for somebody that really had the impact that he had last year. Now, only 1 interception and 6 pass breakups last year, but over 100 tackles as a strong safety. He was all over the place. He was really good against screens. He was a very sure tackler, and he's just somebody that you can really rely on out there as one of the better and more impactful defensive players for the Pittsburgh Steelers last season. I think he's a perfect fit for this scheme, and if the Steelers can get him for kind of a similar price tag to where he's at right now, I absolutely think the Steelers should extend him. I think that he's an awesome player. I think he's a great fit for the locker room and the defensive scheme that they run here in Pittsburgh. And I would love to see him locked up for another couple years. Then Calvin Austin III. This is a receiver here. Obviously, you give DK Metcalf that big contract extension after you trade for him. But Calvin Austin is somebody that I think is a really good number 3 wide receiver, all right? Like, he is very underrated, not only from the national media, but I also think Steelers fans. Like, people talk about the Steelers wide receiver room, like you got DK Metcalf and then a bunch of nobodies. But, like, you watch the film last year, Calvin Austin III is open all the time. And, it kind of goes against popular narrative because he's small and most people just associate small receivers with slot receivers, but I think he's actually better on the outside. He's so quick with his feet that he can avoid punches when people play press against him, and he's just so goddamn fast, and he changes directions like that. He reminds me a lot of Brandon Cooks. Now, he hasn't really put up Brandon Cooks' level of production, at least when Cooks was in his prime, but Cooks in his heyday, man, was a smaller receiver that was better on the outside than he was in the slot. He was a deep threat with great speed and fantastic route running ability and really solid hands. Calvin Austin III describes that to a T. Made some big-time, tough, contested catches for this team down the stretch last year. He's a speed demon who's a deep threat, and he's a fantastic route runner. He's not going to provide much for you in terms of run blocking, so he's not really a true number 2 receiver, at least not in this system with Arthur Smith, who really relies on run blocking. But in pass-heavy situations, Calvin Austin III is an absolute weapon. And for like $10 million per season, I think that'd be more than fair for a guy like Calvin Austin III. Then you get Isaac Seumalo here, somebody that is getting older. He's on the other side of 30, but he's been one of the most reliable guards in football for a very long time. The Steelers really like him. He is the leader on that offensive line. And as you guys can see with his career, PFF grades, as of late, since 2019, he's been one of the highest grading offensive linemen in the game for a very long time. Last year dealt with some injuries and was still in the top 30 among starting guards in football last year. And the 2 years prior to that, when he was more healthy, he was like a top 12, even top 10 offensive guard in football. So he's just super, super reliable when he's healthy again. And, down the stretch, he played some really good football for the Pittsburgh Steelers. So if you wanted to kind of lock him up for another year, I would certainly be supportive of that, especially if it's for the right price. Then we get to Miles Killebrew here. And, you might be saying, but Jack, he's just a special teamer. But Miles Killebrew is a fantastic locker room presence. He's a team captain. And listen, man, Killebrew has more blocked punts than the rest of the league combined since he entered the league. All right, that is an unbelievable statistic. That's just crazy to me, man. Like, he's good for at least one block punt a season. Like, he is. And sometimes it's multiple. Like, having a special teams ace like Miles Killebrew, it just screams everything Steelers, because this team, more than other teams, really prioritizes the special teams area of the game, that third kind of component to the game. And Killebrew is just the type of guy you want in your locker room. And because he doesn't play defense, he's a special teamer, he's going to be super cheap. He wants to be here for his entire career. We actually interviewed him on the channel back during Super Bowl week. He's a fantastic dude. And, I just want him to be a Steeler for much longer than just this season. So I wouldn't mind it at all, especially for the right price, if the Steelers end up extending Miles Killebrew. So outside of TJ Watt, we talked about some other names today of players that could be extended by the Steelers this offseason. I don't expect all of them to get extended. We're just going over candidates today. But let me know which one of the players outside of TJ Watt we talked about today, or somebody else we didn't talk about today, who you want to give an extension to. Let me know what you guys think down there.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things on the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, you can find the show on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe to this YouTube channel to get all of your daily Monday through Friday episodes, as well as our bonus content. We thank you for making us your first listen every day, because we're your team every day. All right, Steelers fans, let's get into this. Now, I teased this segment at the end of last Friday's show when we were talking about how Alex Highsmith said he's very confident the Steelers are going to reach an agreement with TJ Watt. We don't know when that's going to happen, but probably is going to happen. Like that's just that. But he also talked to us about something else that would happen there at the end of the Steelers Thursday OTAs practice, and this also further told me that there isn't much doubt with the Steelers that TJ Watt's going to be part of the fold this year. They're not trading him away, because they're putting together a plan for how both Watt and Highsmith can work better together in 2025. Because I asked Alex Highsmith about the potential of flipping him and TJ Watt's spots in the defense more often during games. And he gave me a full answer here, saying it's part of the plan. Here was Alex Highsmith when I asked him that.
Alex, at the end of last season, TJ talked about the potential of being open to maybe moving around a bit more based off of how teams are trying to scheme you guys up. How have you guys talked about that as a team, just trying to free both of you guys up to keep people guessing where you line up?
Yeah, I think that's something that we definitely got to include in the game. Just like you said, I think teams were kind of catching on to what we were doing, and so I think if we're able to move around different spots and stuff like that, we'll be able to get teams off balance, and they can't just sit there and match protect. And so I'm just excited for what we're going to be able to do this year.
You guys have tons of experience working on the same sides and built that chemistry there. How do you build it so that you guys can have the same sort of chemistry and timing even when you flip different areas?
Yeah, I think just repping it in practice. I think that's a beautiful thing. It's about being out of practice as you get to rep those rep those things and get comfortable what you're uncomfortable at. So whether that's switching sides or working different rushes and stuff like that. So like I said, we're just trying to sharpen it during practice so that we can be able to be effective.
Is that something you've started already, or is that something that takes time down the road?
Yeah, I mean, we haven't started too much of it now, but I know, going next week OTAs, we're definitely, that's, plan on doing that, switching sides and stuff like that. And so, like I said, the more versatile we can be, the better.
Shout out my man Joe Rudder from the Trib with the follow-up question, because that's the next question I wanted to get asked, and he asked it, but it was, hey, so when you guys working on that? And he's like, not right now. We haven't been doing it so far, but next week in OTAs, we think we'll start working on that. And it's just my thoughts here, but if the point is to free up TJ Watt and you're talking about repping that, does that mean that they expect TJ Watt to show up this week during OTAs? Maybe not for sure, but it's at least something else to look at here. But let's dive more into why they're doing this. So one of my biggest critiques of the Steelers defense, outside of the run defense and the coverage issues that they had late in the season, was that they did not do enough to counter how teams were planning to stop or slow down TJ Watt. Now, teams were concentrating a huge part of their protection plans into how they wanted to stop TJ Watt with double teams from offensive linemen and also additional chip blocks from running backs, tight ends, wide receivers, and sometimes all three positions. It was pretty crazy. But we covered this on the show throughout the season. It was something that we knew about. I wrote about it in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette with a film study, because the Steelers during the season recognized it and adjusted to it when they played the Giants. They flipped Watt and Highsmith just 4 times in that game, and it yielded positive results. Watt got more one-on-one opportunities, even on his natural side, which he lines up on the the left side of the defense, because he lines up over the right tackle typically, while Alex Highsmith lines up on the right side of the defense, typically over the left tackle. But the Steelers didn't use the switch after that too many more times. And I thought that could have been a mistake, because in that game against the Giants, they got 2 sacks from TJ Watt. The pressure was ramped up. They won the game. The only other time that they used it more than twice in a game was their win over the Bengals, when, again, TJ Watt had 2 sacks. They won the game. And in both those games, TJ Watt had a sack strip fumble that played a huge role in those wins. So, looking at those, when I said I went back and I looked at those are the only 2 times they did it. Those are 2 of the 3 games that TJ Watt had 2 sacks. So both of those times it yielded positive results. And then for the rest of the season, you really didn't see the Steelers do it that often. Now, part of this is because TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith have had elite chemistry for their 4 years to get together as starter. Because remember, Highsmith was drafted in 2020. Bud Dupree went out because he got paid. Highsmith rolled into a starting role in 2021. That was the year TJ Watt tied Michael Strahan's record. Alex Highsmith held up the defense as best he could when TJ Watt was injured in 2022. And then the last 2 years, they've been pretty good together. So Alex Highsmith and TJ Watt, they know their side. They trust each other. They have this really good chemistry that they've worked on for years. Heck, TJ Watt's been a 4-time first-team All-Pro. Highsmith's had a double-digit sack season. You get my point there. And Watt's been on the elite on the left side of the field. And he's even talked about how he prefers that side of the defense lining up over the right tackle. It's just where he's more comfortable from. We talked to him back in his second year, because remember his rookie season when he lined up, he used to line up over the right side of the defense, and he just said it wasn't as natural of a fit for him. And so the next year they said, hey, we're flipping me and Bud. He's going to do that side. I'm feeling more natural here on the left side of the defense over the right tackle of the offense. And that's when TJ Watt's production started to improve more. So eventually he became the TJ Watt, superstar defender, edge rusher, first team All-Pro, defensive player of the year type guy. And that's elite. And when an elite player tells you where they want to line up, you let them do it. I mean, heck, go ask Ryan Clark, Dick LeBeau, and Ike Taylor about where Troy Polamalu lined up. You know where he lined up? Wherever Troy Polamalu wanted to line up in the defense. Go ask James Harrison where he lined up sometimes. There are certain players you give the credence to. Hey, where you want to be, we trust you because you're that kind of a playmaker. So naturally, the Steelers would adhere to TJ Watt. And if you don't believe that TJ Watt wanted this, he even kind of admitted it at the end of the season when he said he has to be the one that's open to making this change because he wants to make sure that he's getting more production. He said that's after when the Steelers were cleaning out their lockers the week after they were cleaning out their lockers after the Ravens loss. Here was TJ Watt.
I know you had a strip sack in the Bengals game that got called back because of the penalty. Other than that, why do you think you weren't as productive in these last 3 or 4 games?
I don't know. I just need to find ways to make more plays. Obviously, teams are playing certain ways and chips and helps and stuff like that and getting the ball out quick. And you need to be more open to moving around more and trying to affect the game as much as possible. You guys know I want to affect the game more than anybody. But I don't want to selfishly take another guy's go to a different spot. And I feel like I could have a better rush on the left side. Definitely feel like schematically it's been a tough year for how the offensive scheme things to try to get me out of the game. And, it's going to be a big breakdown for me to try to find ways to make plays. I'm not making excuse for myself at all. I want to make plays. I need to find ways to continue to win off the chips and slides and things of that nature. And I'm going to work tirelessly this offseason to get that sorted out.
You mentioned
So right there, you have TJ Watt, saying that was months ago. That was January, right after the Ravens lost. That was still fresh. And he's saying back then, we got to make this change. So I personally, I think it's a positive there that he's willing to do this. And so now you have Watt acknowledging it back in January that this needs to be a change. And now you have Alex Highsmith acknowledging today that it is going to be a change. Now, those are all good signs for me that I think that this could actually happen. This could be something that the Steelers actively do to boost pass rush production. Now, I have a new film study coming out that's going to focus more on what they need to do and things that they did in that Bengals game and other things they could do to help with this overall project. That should be coming out in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette either today or on tomorrow on Tuesday. So look that up at post-gazette.com for that Steelers film study on specifically edge rushers and the alignment of Watt and Highsmith and what they can do to be better there. But the biggest thing to remember with all of this is it's not just about getting TJ Watt free. It's not just about that, him being on the right side of the defense against the, versus the left side, and that just solves every problem. It's more so about complicating and disguising what the Steelers are doing up front. I've said before on this show, defensive coordinator Terrell Austin, his specialty coming into the position was being a defensive backs coach, and he brought in more complex coverage packages that disguised what they were doing in the secondary. Go back and look at some of Minka Fitzpatrick's numbers from when he first made the switch and how they did that there. But his defensive fronts weren't as complex as Keith Butler, his predecessor at defensive coordinator, who was a linebackers coach. Keith Butler was all about mixing up and making complex blitz packages. But also, for years, Terrell Austin didn't have to create complex packages. TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith were just wrecking balls. So they were just taking things over. And so they were dominant forces, and you didn't need to get too complex. But now you're probably going to see a more aggressive defensive pass rush package that the Steelers are going to be rolling out this year, along with maybe some more of those complex coverage schemes that I think could get highlighted more if the Steelers communicate better on the back end of the defense. And remember,
Former Pittsburgh Steelers offensive coordinator Todd Haley believes Aaron Rodgers is still the best option for the team this year. Haley says that while there is an inherent risk in adding Rodgers to the team, he still believes in Rodgers' talent and would be willing to take on that risk. I still believe, like I said all along, he's the best option for the Steelers for the situation they're in at this time. Maybe he signs, maybe he doesn't. If he does sign, maybe it looks great, maybe it looks average, Haley said Sirius XM. I still think it's the best option, and one I'd be willing to take a risk on, knowing you only get so many shots at this. You've got a really good defense. You've got one of the best head coaches in the league. You now have an offensive coordinator who I think is really good at what he does, especially for that team. In his latest interview on the Joe Rogan Experience, Rodgers may have just revealed and hinted at the issues he hopes to resolve in his personal life. Rodgers said multiple people in his life are dealing with serious illnesses, including cancer. I've figured it out during the last year when I've been in the weeds with these people who are close to me that have cancer, Rodgers said. That is taking a personal toll on Rodgers, who discussed non-conventional treatment options on the podcast. Still, he offered no certain timetable for a decision and seemed focused on his personal life first before anything else. Either way, Rodgers was the talk of the first OTA session, and he has still yet to sign a deal. The Steelers resume OTAs on Tuesday, and mandatory minicamp kicks off on June 10th. And you, fan, what do you think about Aaron Rodgers' situation? Leave your opinion in the comments.